Okay, really quick background. Don Hertzfeldt is this guy who studied filmmaking, then got into animation, and he's been releasing cool short pieces for about 20 years now, and some have been nominated for Oscars, and he supposedly has the camera that was used to shoot the Peanuts Christmas special. World of Tomorrow is a series of short films that Hertzfeldt has been releasing periodically over the last few years, and all three feature the voice acting of Julia Pott, a great animator in her own right who has worked on Adventure Time and created a show that I really like called Summer Camp Island. World of Tomorrow, Episode 3, is brand new, and it's available to rent on Vimeo. I didn't see a purchase option, so I don't know about that. Now, here's the review of Episode 3. The overall tone here is very similar to that of Hertzfeldt's more serious work, which really means the previous World of Tomorrow episodes and his titanic short film series, It's Such a Beautiful Day, which, after watching for the first time, jumped up into my all-time favorite pieces of media, and to this day, it's still in there somewhere, hovering toward the very top. But what is that tone exactly? I guess I would describe it as a version of happy sad comedy, which is usually used to describe the likes of BoJack, Louie, and even that show Insecure at certain moments, I think. It seems like Hertzfeldt really likes to combine weirdo storytelling elements with very genuine humor and emotion. It's what he's been doing for many years now, and it works tremendously. There's definitely that postmodern aspect to a lot of his work where it feels like he's purposefully getting in the way of the viewer, but those moments never last too long before the viewer gets pulled back in with a compelling bit of storytelling or just a great joke. The next point goes beyond World of Tomorrow specifically, but I think this combination that I just mentioned is a fantastic way to get more people to check out work that could be classified as some variety of avant-garde. It's such a wonderful balance that enhances both sides, both the accessible and the challenging. They benefit from each other. As for the story in this one, I won't be sharing any major details, but I will say that in comparison to the other World of Tomorrow shorts, this single entry probably gets the closest to having a direct and consistent narrative. From very early on, we know what the character's motivations are, and we watch as the character tries to achieve them, all while the viewer is submerged in this ornate sci-fi future that implies a lot more detail than it explicitly provides. I think the story also benefits from how long this short is. It's over 30 minutes, and I'm not sure that any Hertzfeldt short on its own has ever been this long. The runtime fits this episode really well, and that feeling was heightened by my very subjective excitement just to be watching a new short from one of my favorite animators. I felt like I was being spoiled, not only because the story gets a satisfying conclusion, but also because, as with any Hertzfeldt work, it's incredibly dense. The visual density is easy enough to notice, even just from the teaser clips for this one. You've got character models in his typical stick figure style, then you've got digital animation and environments in almost every scene, and on top of it all, there are windows of live action video footage, which Hertzfeldt also used to great effect in It's Such a Beautiful Day shorts. But that sense of density, bad wording, goes much farther. The sound design is also incredibly busy. Voiceover communicating important story elements gets distorted and obscured, and computer interface sound effects are often very loud and glitchy, but also somehow appealing. Most important to me, however, is the conceptual density of the short. The World of Tomorrow episodes have been especially exciting for this exact reason. Yes, we can call this sci-fi, and that's precisely what it is, but it's a rare flavor of sci-fi that is so thoroughly packed with ideas and creativity and storytelling potential that it's just plain overwhelming, but in the best way possible. When I look at examples of so-called classic sci-fi, a lot of it has maybe 2 or 3 cool new ideas and proceeds to lean into those ideas for the duration. Blade Runner has replicants and, well, Blade Runners. Star Wars has, dirty spaceships and outlaws and a pretty tired tale of rebelling against authority because the bad guys are bad, I guess. Even great contemporary sci-fi like Ex Machina stays pretty focused on a handful of themes and doesn't tell us too much more about the fictional world that we're inhabiting. There's nothing wrong with this approach, and it definitely has its roots in very old science fiction. Think Ray Bradbury and trashy sci-fi erotica magazines from the 50s and 60s. Because back then, each story had one central gimmick and that was about it. That one idea would get explored, and then it was over. But when it comes to the way Hertzfeldt handles sci-fi, I'm having trouble finding other media with a similar approach. The closest I can get for now is the fiction of George Saunders. Sure, a lot of his stories still revolve around a central concept, but each of those ideas is so evocative that it's easy to imagine the world in which that story takes place. World of Tomorrow just keeps throwing ideas at the viewer, and almost every single one of them would be 100% worthy of its own story. And some of the special enjoyment of watching episode 3 comes from how it expands on and alters some of the excellent ideas from the 2 previous episodes. If this tendency to keep throwing cool sci-fi concepts at the viewer didn't actually contribute to the story, I would probably get annoyed with it. The ideas would still add to the world building, but after a certain point, that would just be unnecessary, and it might actually get in the way of the pacing. But so many of the sci-fi ideas here do add to the central story. You'll also end up running into 3 or 4 ideas that don't seem immediately relevant. Then, 15 minutes later, they become extremely relevant. Just one small sci-fi tidbit I'd like to share with you folks is the concept of cloning. Plenty of science fiction has tried to tackle this subject in the past, and it mostly that kind of stuff tends to send a message of, you know what, cloning might be a bad idea, and this is an important lesson for the viewer. Look how smart we are. But here, in the World of Tomorrow series, I guess we can call it, cloning is a fact of life. And rather than acting as a setup for some heavy-handed moral, it just makes the story itself more interesting. People just get cloned. That's how they continue living. Thing is, there are plenty of problems with the cloning process, as well as with time travel, which is completely ubiquitous, at least for those who can actually afford it. On their own, these concepts make the story feel like good sci-fi, but in terms of character, they offer a massive amount of creative potential. Despite the fact that these shorts never overtly ask the viewer to consider the morality of what's happening on screen, you can't help but wonder how these new norms impact the characters we spend our time with. What is their sense of individuality like? Does the 4th clone of a person somehow feel less valuable than the 3rd or than the 2nd? How would clones interact with each other? Do they share a special sense of intimacy because they have so many of the same memories, whether natural or purchased? In episode 3, no character is entirely themselves, and similarly, their motivations are mixed between personal drive and instructions they're getting from somebody else, or even from another time. These are shades of human experience that don't really exist yet, but somehow they still feel relatable. I don't know about you, but I've had nights where I felt like the 5th clone of someone long dead. To sum all of this up, I'll say that your brain will be very active when watching. It can feel difficult to keep up at times, but it's just about guaranteed that no matter how you watch, you'll catch the most important story points. And here's something I feel like I should say during any positive review. I don't think the positive critique I provide is meant to imply that everyone will love this game or movie or whatever. I talk about the things I like to see, and that's as far as I can go. I can't speak to other people's tastes at all. With World of Tomorrow episode 3 in particular, I would definitely understand if somebody jumped in and just hated every minute of it, especially if they're not already used to engaging with media that's just different in so many ways. This is something I talked about in that Charlie Kaufman video, and it definitely applies here too. It's not that I think World of Tomorrow is the ultimate example of what sci-fi should look like today, or what it should look like 20 years from now. But here, today, in October of 2020, I am grateful for what Don Hertzfeldt and World of Tomorrow have to offer. I stay engaged with the work, I laugh harder than I probably should when sitting around by myself, and I get hit hard by those sprinkled out emotional moments that Hertzfeldt has used to build his career. I don't feel I'm overstepping to say that this is something special, not only in the world of animation, but in sci-fi too, and even just comedy. Like its characters, World of Tomorrow is exploring. It's looking around at a very strange place and trying to figure things out. I don't think I can ask animation to do much more than that.